Jackson Reid had always been a man of reason. A retired science teacher from Minnesota, Jackson believed in facts, data, and the certainty of natural laws. At 78, he was healthy for his age, walking a couple of miles each morning, watching his salt intake and getting regular checkups. But something had shifted in the past few months. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper. And Jackson, a man who once scoffed at signs and omens, began to wonder if life was whispering a message to him. It began one chilly October morning. He stood at the edge of the lake by his cabin, where he and his late wife Laura had spent every fall since 1984. The water was unusually still. The reflection of the sky on the lake's surface looked like a sheet of silver glass. As he stood there with his coffee, he felt a weight, not of fear but of clarity. His thoughts drifted back to a conversation he once had with Laura during her final days in hospice care. "I think the body tells you when it's time," she had whispered. "Not with pain but with quiet. Like nature before a storm. You don't always feel sick. You just start seeing differently." Back then, he thought it was the morphine talking. But now he understood what she meant. Jackson started noticing things, subtle things. His sleep changed. He wasn't restless, but his dreams were unusually vivid, filled with faces from the past. His appetite waned not from illness but from a sense of being full. Full of life, full of memories. He wasn't hungry for food anymore. He was hungry for meaning. One evening, his daughter Melissa called. "Dad, you've sounded different lately," she said. "Not sad. Just peaceful. Like you've made peace with something." He smiled. "Maybe I have." He didn't explain what he meant. How could he? How do you tell someone that you feel your time is near? Not with dread but acceptance. Then came a day when he visited the graveyard near his childhood home. It wasn't planned. He just ended up there while taking a scenic drive. He walked among the tombstones, many of them familiar. Friends, teachers, old neighbors. He knelt down by his father's grave and placed his hand on the cool marble. "I think I understand now," he said softly. "Why you stopped trying so hard toward the end. It wasn't giving up. It was letting go." Over the weeks that followed, Jackson found himself more interested in listening than speaking. His usual desire to explain things faded. He watched the squirrels with fascination. He paid attention to the wind, the trees, the soft creaking of his floorboards. It was during this time he started journaling, and in one entry he wrote, "There are signs I believe now. Not mystical ones but sacred ones. Not because they predict but because they prepare. The universe, or maybe God, is kind that way." One night, after cleaning out an old drawer, he found a letter Laura had written him, unopened. She must have slipped it in there before she passed. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. "If you're reading this, Jackson, then you're probably sensing what I did years ago. Don't be afraid. Death isn't the end. It's a passage. And you'll know it's coming, not from tests or symptoms, but from stillness, from signs. Look for them and don't run from them. Let them guide you home." That letter hit him like a tide. He understood now. The signs weren't some checklist of medical symptoms. They were spiritual mile markers, and he'd crossed 5 of them, each shaping his final days in a new light. The first was withdrawal from the world. He no longer felt the urgency to be involved in every conversation, news event, or social gathering. He cherished solitude, not out of sadness, but out of reverence for life's quiet beauty. The second was clarity of memory. Not the confusion people feared with age, but the opposite. He remembered things from his youth with startling detail. The smell of his mother's Sunday roast, the sound of gravel beneath his bicycle tires, the kiss Laura gave him on their first date. These memories felt like gifts, returning to him to be honored before he left. The third was detachment from material things. He gave away his books, his antique radio collection, even his prized wristwatch to his grandson Noah. He felt no loss. In fact, he felt free. The fourth was a longing for loved ones long gone. not in a painful way but a joyful one. He often imagined conversations with Laura. Sometimes he'd talk aloud to her, and strangely enough, he felt her answers, not in words but in warmth. And the fifth, a deep sense of peace. Jackson stopped worrying about his legacy, his finances, even his body. He wasn't scared. Instead, he was filled with awe. Every leaf that fell in his yard seemed to be a reminder. Life lets go when it's ready. Melissa visited one weekend. "You've got this glow about you," she said, hugging him tightly. "Glow," he chuckled. "That just might be my porch light reflecting off my bald head." But she knew what she saw. Her father, once a busy mind of analysis and logic, now radiated something transcendent. She stayed with him for several days, cooking his favorite meals, listening to his stories, laughing like they hadn't in years. On the last morning of her visit, she found him sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a thick plaid blanket, facing the lake. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, sipping his coffee. "Stunning," she replied, sitting beside him. He placed a hand over hers. "If I go soon, I want you to know I've had a full life. A truly full life." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "I know, Dad. And I'm so proud of you. For everything. For being brave." He smiled, and they sat there in silence for almost an hour, watching the clouds drift. A week later, Jackson passed away peacefully in his sleep. There was no drama, no emergency, no fear. Just silence and peace. Melissa held his journal after the funeral, turning to the last page. In his familiar handwriting, he'd written, "The signs are real. Not to scare us but to ready us. If you're reading this and wondering whether death is near, ask yourself not if you're afraid, but if you're at peace. If so, you're not dying. You're arriving." The story of Jackson Reid became something Melissa would share often, at church groups, senior centers, and even on her small YouTube channel called Everyday Grace. The video she recorded, titled "These 5 Signs Mean Your Death is Near," was not morbid or fearful. It was filled with love, wisdom, and acceptance. People left thousands of comments. Some shared their own experiences with aging loved ones. Others said it brought comfort to their fear of mortality. The video didn't go viral in a flashy way. It quietly touched hearts, just like Jackson had. In the end, the signs weren't warnings. They were invitations to prepare, to forgive, to love, and to let go. And through Jackson's story, many found not a fear of death, but a reason to live more fully today.